Today on the show, we have a couple listener requests. Layer Cake from 2004 and The Ledge from 2011. Check it out. All right, everyone. Welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Today, we have a couple of movies, and my goodness gracious, they could not be at farther ends of the spectrum. I was so shocked by how differently I felt about either of these movies, but I'd like to talk about something I posted. As I've mentioned, I'm quite a ways ahead on recording, so I have all these episodes that are lined up to go, and it's like I'm recording stuff that's supposed to be released in like December right now, and it's actually like more like the beginning of September, and so I just have all of this extra stuff, so I'm just trying to figure out how I want to proceed, if I want to release these request ones sooner or what. But anyway, I recently released my episode on getting even with Dad and serving Sarah, and I posed the question, is Ted Danson attractive? Is Matthew Perry attractive? And I determined that it would seem as though neither of them are overly attractive, and that women are inherently less shallow than guys, or at least they are less vocal about being shallow, because honestly, there are a lot of female celebrities I can think of that I would admit that I found attractive, but if I said it in front of the wrong person, like especially women that I know, they would judge me super hardcore for it, like really fucking bad. And I mean, like, I can think of some examples, okay? Just women that I guarantee if I say they're attractive, girls will have a certain reaction to it, that it's like one of shame. Like, I just can't believe you would actually think they're attractive. And so we start out with the Queen, Taylor Swift, okay? Attractive, immensely talented, constantly putting out new material. She hasn't like faded as she's gotten older. She's just stayed shining bright. Nothing that I could see not to love about that. And people don't seem to like her because she's like a serial dater, as they can see. It's like she dates a lot of guys and she breaks up with them and then she writes an album about them and different things like that. I don't really care about that. I mean, so what if she uses that to, channel into music and write good songs? It's like, I have no fucking problem with that. And then you've got like Kim Kardashian, who got famous because she has a big ass and a sex tape, as you may have heard. But she's now like immensely wealthy and she does really well for herself. I find her attractive. She's a good looking person. I think that that's a reasonable statement to say that she's a good looking person. It's just people don't generally look at her like favorably as a person, I don't think. We've got Heidi Montag, who I'll admit, I can see why people wouldn't like finding out that somebody finds her attractive, but she was good looking before she got plastic surgery. She's good looking now to me, and I know that, like, I usually have less of an offensive reaction to plastic surgery. Like, it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers some people. I don't really care. I mean, if you still look good, you still look good. I do wish fewer people would get plastic surgery because I don't think they look as bad as they think they do. And that's just that. I mean, that's all there is to it. But Heidi Montag, obviously, like, she was on that show The Hills, and everybody just knows that she's not a great person. And the guy that she was with, I don't know if he still is with her, is like also a bad guy. So there's that. Kesha, who has a really trashy persona, definitely attractive, very good looking person. Nicki Minaj, also trashy, but super hot. I mean, the only thing I don't like about her is that it's been brought to light that she like, they do a lot of like Photoshop type retouchings of her, and I think she'd still be good looking without those, but it's like they feel the need to make people flawless, and it's like, I don't need that at all, like even a little bit. Kristen Stewart is great looking girl. I think Twilight is what really dings her. She was in those movies and they're not looked upon very favorably. So it's like, what can you do? Amy Schumer, who is a comedian who actually I don't think that women would necessarily be upset with me if I said she was attractive. I think they might be surprised, but she's got the allure of like the thought of like, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I feel like if I dated her, she would like make fun of me a lot and it would be kind of hot. I don't know why, but it's like she could be funny about it and I don't know. It is what it is. Okay, Paris Hilton, another one. She's very attractive, but she's kind of airheaded. She just, she's got that rich girl syndrome. Lindsay Lohan, all the drugs, the plastic surgery. Miley Cyrus, the trashiness. Snooki, trashy. And these are all people that I still currently find attractive, not that I used to find attractive and don't anymore. I still do, but I used to too, that kind of thing. Kelly Ripa apparently is not well liked by a lot of people. I don't know anything about this, but apparently it's a thing. So but Kelly Ripa, ever since she took over for Kathy Lee Gifford on Regis and Kathy Lee, like I've loved her. I thought she's gorgeous. Honestly, can't get enough of her. Stacey Dash, politics, probably an awful human being, very good looking. I'm sorry, she just is. Kendra Wilkinson, the whole Hugh Hefner thing, she was one of the 3 girls that was dating Hugh Hefner, and she's alarmingly attractive. And then I will say, objectively, I don't think Iggy Azalea is attractive at all. I don't find her appealing. I don't like her music. I don't like much of anything about Iggy Azalea. It's just a me thing. So let's just get on to these movies. We've got Layer Cake, which was released on October 1st, 2004, directed by Matthew Vaughn, who also directed Stardust, which I still need to see, Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, and the Kingsman movies. Writers were, novel and screenplay writer was J.J. Connolly. And so it's like he wrote the book that this movie was based on. And so I always put a lot of appreciation into that, where it's like if the guy who wrote the book is writing the movie, I rarely see that go over poorly, honestly. It's a really good thing to have that happen. Producers, Adam Bowling, he's collaborated a lot with the director of this movie. He also did Rocket Man, which was the Elton John biopic. Then we have lead actor Daniel Craig. Okay, he plays the character Quad X, 4 X's, and basically he doesn't have a name, and they just put that in as a placeholder. But he was in Lara Croft Tomb Raider, Road to Perdition, Munich, the James Bond movies as James Bond, The Golden Compass, Defiance, which I kind of need to see. I'm not really sure I need to see it, but How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Logan Lucky, and Knives Out. And there's actually a new Knives Out movie coming out, and I really love Knives Out, so I can't wait to see the new Knives Out movie. So then we have Sienna Miller, which I'll kind of cover this a little bit later, but I'm a little shocked that she is on IMDb, she is second billed in this movie, and I shit you not, maybe 5 minutes of screen time. Like, it is ridiculous how little we see of Sienna Miller, but I do have it noted here that she is hot, which is always important to note, and she plays the character Tammy. She was in the remake of Elfie with Jude Law. She was in Stardust, which I also need to see, by the way. I already mentioned that. She was in Foxcatcher, which was god fucking awful. I really hated that movie. And Black Mass, which was decent. It was not a bad movie. It was pretty solid, actually. Then we have Michael Gambon, who plays Eddie Temple, and he was in the Harry Potter movies as the second Dumbledore. And he always annoyed me in the Harry Potter movies because I felt like he was always angry and yelling, and that was like the opposite of what I read Dumbledore to be in the books, And so it wasn't a good interpretation of the part, I guess. He was in The Insider, he was in Gosford Park, The King's Speech, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and Little Women from 2017. Okay, pretty solid thus far. Tom Hardy. Oh yeah, I love Tom Hardy. He played Clarky in this movie, and he was in Black Hawk Down, The Dark Knight Rises, Warrior, Sucker Punch, Rock'n'Rolla, Bronson, Inception, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Lawless, Locke, Mad Max Fury Road, Legend, The Revenant, the Venom movies, and Capone. Okay? Fucking love Tom Hardy. God damn it. Do I fucking ever love him. Anyway, Ben Whishaw is in this movie, and he plays Sidney, and the only claim I have for him is he played Q in the new James Bond movies with Daniel Craig, so there's that connective tissue there. And then is it really Burn Gorman? Anyway, Burn Gorman plays the character of Gaza, and he was in The Dark Knight Rises with Tom Hardy. So, another connective tissue. Gotta love it. Okay, so casting notes. So apparently this was the role that pushed Barbara Broccoli into wanting to cast Daniel Craig as James Bond. She thought she could see him doing well in the movie, or, as James Bond in the movies. Little plot synopsis. In a less lighthearted Guy Ritchie-style story, an unnamed protagonist who happens to be a successful cocaine dealer is given two difficult tasks to complete by the man he works for. All right, a little bit of notes. We got, Daniel Craig talking about, how the world has changed since he's grown up and all this stuff, and how things used to be and how things have changed, and how now it's getting to where drugs are more common and things like that. And it goes from like cops and robbers to LSD in the hippie age and different things like that. But anyway, so we're introduced to we slowly get introduced to these characters in this movie. And it's like we meet Clarky, who is Tom Hardy. And I didn't even recognize him at first because he was so young. But he was barely in this movie. Like, I'll say that right now. He only has a few key scenes, and he doesn't really stand out that much in this movie at all, but I'm still glad he got the role. I'm glad that it was like a building block for his career. And I would say basically Craig is sharing his drug dealing rules and how, the things you don't want to do, kind of like the 10 crack commandments type thing. It's like, don't get high on your own supply, don't get too close to the end user, blah, blah, blah. So this is where I had to look it up on Wikipedia, because it's like, I like to, in my notes, refer to the characters by their names as opposed to the actor who plays them, unless the movie sucks so bad that they haven't really earned that from me. I guess they just decided, like, the author put a placeholder name of XXXX, and he was just gonna go back and change the name later, and then he decided not to change it back, and he decided that the character didn't need a name to be, to still make it a good story. So Daniel Craig's character is just unnamed, and you never hear him referred to by name. And they go to this meeting with this, with basically Daniel Craig's boss, and it's pretty interesting. He kind of sets him off on this task of, like, basically he needs to get these pills, and he needs to find this guy's daughter. And so, I mean, it's pretty intense, like, what he has to do. And, like, Craig is basically like, he wants to retire. He's, like, ready to be done. And it's like, he doesn't want this one last thing. He wants to just have it over with, but they won't let him have that. And so we get some of these really cool shots, where you'll see one scene and they'll zoom into something on the table, and then they'll pan over across the table while still zoomed in. And all of a sudden when they zoom back out, you are in another scene, and it's really awesome. Like, I really like the look of it. So Jimmy is the big boss. He's the one that's tasking Daniel Craig with these items, and he wants him to find the girl. He's saying that she's hooked on coke, all this stuff. And then we see the guy that I mentioned earlier that's in The Dark Knight Rises, Burn Gorman, and they're going to go buy some ecstasy from these lower level dealers, but they say that they want too much, and so it kind of mucks up everything for them because they really need to buy them, but they don't want to overpay. And Craig runs into, they're at a bar, and he runs into a guy named Sidney, who is the nephew of one of Jimmy, I think. And it's like, so he's with this girl, and it's Sienna Miller. She's Tammy, and she is clearly into Daniel Craig, but she's dating the Sidney guy. And so she slips Daniel Craig her number. And, basically you don't really see much happen with that very quickly. So it's like, it just kind of trails off, and you're like, what's going on here? And then, and the nephew guy is the guy that plays Q in the fucking James Bond movies, the new ones. And I thought that was pretty awesome that he's in this movie with Daniel Craig. And then these, the bad guys, I think they were the ones that were the dealers that wanted too much for the pills. They end up robbing these Serbians, and it really sets off a lot of unpleasantness. And there's a pretty intense scene where Jimmy is pissed at Daniel Craig for telling them the pills were, they were too much or whatever. He really wanted him to just fucking get it over with and buy them. And honestly, like, I said it at this point, I was like, I can't tell if it's just the Cockney accents, but like, this feels so much like a Guy Ritchie movie. It's not even cool. Like, it is ridiculous how similar all of the elements of the story are to a Guy Ritchie. And that's the thing, is it's like, this guy came out with this book in like 2000. So it's like, he could have easily been influenced by Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, I think. I can't remember when Snatch came out for sure, but I know Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was out. And so there's a scene where this black guy that is with Daniel Craig, he like beats the ever-loving shit out of this other guy. And it was kind of like shit like this that I was very confused. I was having trouble like figuring out, okay, why is this person relevant? Who are they? Like, what are they doing? What do they want to do? I mean, I don't really get it. Later on, we get a scene with Daniel Craig. He's finally called Tammy, and they're at this hotel, and she's going into the bathroom to get changed into her, her lingerie or whatever. And Daniel Craig answers the door, and these two guys kidnap him and take him to the top of this building. And he's, this is where he meets Eddie Temple, who is Michael Gambon. And his daughter is Charlie, the girl that Daniel Craig is supposed to be finding at the behest of Jimmy. So Temple provides proof via recording that Jimmy blames Temple for losses on investments and intended to use Temple's daughter as a hostage for leverage until Eddie Temple recouped his losses. And so that's what, Daniel Craig is just finding out. And so it's also revealed that Jimmy is an informant for Scotland Yard, and he plans to double-cross Daniel Craig and turn him in after the pills are sold in exchange for immunity regarding his own crimes. So Eddie wants Daniel Craig to sell him the pills instead of selling them to Jimmy. He would rather, get the pills. And so we're getting a lot of sweet camera work, a lot of cool shots, a lot of panning around rooms and seeing things in a different perspective. And I just love that kind of shit, guys. It's fucking great. So Craig goes, he's going to assassinate Jimmy, and, he's hesitant to do it once he's like finally on the spot having to do it. And then he just does it and runs away. And he doesn't like pick up the shell casing or anything. He doesn't do any of that stuff like he's supposed to. And then Daniel Craig finds out that Jimmy's accountant has vanished along with Craig's money. And Craig shows the guys the evidence of what Jimmy was planning. The guys that Craig usually works with. He shows them the proof that, that this Jimmy guy was no good. And it's at this point that I asked myself, how in fuck's name was Sienna Miller second billed on IMDb? Like, the cast list is in order of appearance on the, on the end credits, but it's like she is second billed in this fucking movie by IMDb. So anyway, Craig plans to kill this guy, Dragan, but it's Dragan, and he's gonna have him meet him by the park. It's a really cool scene. Like, basically, Craig wants to set it up to have a hitman take out this dragon guy, and it's like, he just fucking, the dragon guy is too good, and he fucking figures it out, and he shoots the hitman before the hitman can see him. And then when Dragon finishes the hitman, he basically, makes Craig know that he's definitely got him at gunpoint, and he's going to, he's going to make Craig get the pills for him. And it's like same way with Tom Hardy. I keep seeing like bits and pieces of him in this movie, but he is barely fucking in it. Like, he is just a very, like, low-level character. And I'm guessing that they retroactively changed the billing order of these actors based on their subsequent fame, because they were not huge parts in this movie. And I would have loved to see Tom Hardy or Sienna Miller have a bigger part in this movie, but that's not what they did. We get this raid through, like they're at this building. They're chasing Daniel Craig, and they barely get away. And I mean, there's a lot of great scenes like that where it's like, it's very intense, it's very well orchestrated and exciting. It's like, at the end of the movie, it's like, I'm going to spoil it. So, I mean, I've already given a lot away, so fucking deal with it. At the ending, it's like Craig gets everybody everything that they wanted, and they're going to sit down and discuss what's, the next order of business. And Craig's like, no, I'm fucking done. I'm over this shit. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And so he takes, he takes off, and he's going to leave with Sienna Miller. And it's at this point that Craig gets assassinated on the steps of this fucking country club establishment. And it's like, the movie just fucking ends with Craig dying. And it's like, yeah, I like that. Because, I mean, they had another ending lined up, and they had shown it to, they had shown what made the theatrical cut to audiences, and they liked it a lot better because it didn't have a happy ending like a lot of American films do. And so they really preferred that, and so that's what they ended up going with. So, highlights and praise for me in this film. Okay, pretty great ending, I'll be honest with you. I really liked the ending. The performances across the board were stellar. I really liked them. The cinematography was great, as I've mentioned. A lot of cool shots, a lot of awesome and, experimental type stuff. And then the story was fairly intricate. Some of it might have gone over my head, which is, it's difficult. I try and take notes. It's like, if I don't take notes at all, I don't have anything to talk about because I can't remember enough of the movie after the fact. But it's like, I really enjoyed it for its intricacy, and I can appreciate it even if I didn't pick up on every little nuance that they were going for. And the characters were really well written, well designed. Criticism, the only thing I'll say, other than, the movie being a little hard to keep up with at times, is the music was way too fucking loud. I kept having to do the whole, turn it up 20 notches for the dialogue and then turn it down 20 notches for the music scenes. And it's like, yeah, I don't need this. I don't need that in my life. Some trivia for you. Okay, so Guy Ritchie was originally supposed to direct, but dropped out due to prior commitments. And I think this could have been a very different movie because Guy Ritchie has a lot more humor baked into his movies. He always has like some silly wise guys going on. And in this movie, you didn't get as much of that. You had a couple light comic relief moments, and that was it. But it's like, I like it when something is full on serious and, it fucking gives a shit, And so the first draft of the screenplay was originally 408 pages, which is not surprising because the author wrote the screenplay and, he's an author, he's a novelist, So apparently the fuck word and its derivatives are used 210 times in this movie, which I always like to hear. So yeah, Sony wanted to have the happier ending to this movie, but because of the test screenings, they ended up going with the one that they ended up with, and I really like it. Runtime, 105 minutes. Budget, $6.5 million. Worldwide gross, $11.9 million. IMDb rating 7.3, Rotten Tomato Critics score 80%, Rotten Tomato audience score 84%, and personal rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really liked this one, guys. Thanks for the recommendation, Chris. I really appreciate it. You haven't let me down. So now we have The Ledge, which came out in July 8th of 2011, and is directed by one Matthew Chapman, and he has mostly writing credits on his resume, and he hasn't done a lot since this. He wrote, What's the Worst That Could Happen? And I think that's with Danny DeVito and Martin Lawrence, if you can believe it. And then Runaway Jury, and basically nothing else I've heard of, honestly. The score was composed by Nathan Barr. He did the Dukes of Hazzard movie with Jessica Simpson. He did The Last Exorcism, The Boy Next Door, and The House with a Clock in Its Walls, which all of those, except for The Last Exorcism, which I've already seen, none of those movies are movies I need to see ever in my lifetime. I'm all good on all of those. Actually, no, I have seen The Boy Next Door. God damn it, me and my fucking memory. Okay, so The Boy Next Door is the one with Jennifer Lopez, and basically the boy next door is this young guy who gets way too into her and is a psychopath. Yeah, not a great movie. Top billed is Charlie Hunnam. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Hunnam. And he plays Gavin Nichols. He was in Sons of Anarchy, Undeclared, Cold Mountain, Green Street Hooligans, which I need to revisit. I haven't seen that movie in fucking 15 to 20 years. Whenever it came out, I probably saw it 5 years after it came out. Anyway, he was in Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, The Lost City of Z, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Children of Men. He's not bad. He's not in a lot of stuff that I really enjoy, to be honest, but I do, I do like him. I think he's usually pretty solid. Then we have Patrick Wilson, who plays the character Joe, and he was in the Conjuring movies and Lakeview Terrace, Watchmen, The A-Team, Insidious, Prometheus, and Aquaman. And then Liv Tyler, who I have noted here is hot. She plays Shayna. She was in the Lord of the Rings movies, Empire Records, That Thing You Do, Armageddon, Jersey Girl, Reign Over Me, The Strangers, The Incredible Hulk, Super, and Ad Astra, which was a Brad Pitt movie. I kind of want to see it, but I kind of don't at the same time. And then we have Terrence Howard, who plays Hollis Lucetti, and he was, of course, in Iron Man as Rhodey, and then they realized they were paying him significantly more than they were paying Robert Downey Jr., and they cast Don Cheadle because they couldn't afford Terrence Howard anymore because he was at the peak of his fame. And then he was in Hustle and Flow, Mr. Holland's Opus, Dead Presidents, The Best Man, Crash, which I fucking hate Crash, by the way, Ray, Four Brothers, Get Rich or Die Tryin', and Prisoners. And I don't remember much of Prisoners, but I think I liked the movie. I just don't remember Terrence Howard being in that movie. Anyway, so plot synopsis: a man who is on a ledge is being talked down by a police negotiator, and he basically walks through all of the troubles in his life that led him to this point. And Terrence Howard also gets a little bit of backstory in this moment too. Yeah, that's my plot synopsis because I'm fucking a rambling lunatic right now. Anyway, early on, I liked in the opening credits, the music was solid. I didn't really know what this movie was at all, so I mean, that's usually how I like it. But the music was solid. And Hollis, who is Terrence Howard's character, finds out that due to a birth defect, he is infertile, and he has been infertile his entire life. And basically, Gavin is hanging out on the ledge. We see him at this point, and he's just hanging out there, and Hollis has to go and try and talk him down because he's up way too high, and they can't put anything on the ground that will prevent his death if he jumps. So they basically just want to, try and get him to to come quietly, And Hollis is trying to talk him down. They're trying to find some common ground. They get to talking about Hollis's personal life, and Hollis really doesn't want to get into it. They all of a sudden, you just see what is assumed to be a flashback because Gavin's going to start telling his story. And Gavin is on a bus with Shayna, Liv Tyler's character, and they don't really appear to know each other. And then we're like in Gavin's office, and this random hot girl just comes in, and she's like talking about how she has to write this report for school, and Gavin is talking to her about, and she has to write about an inanimate object that she has an emotional attachment to, and she fucking whips out this vibrator, and it's just the super awkwardest fucking humor. It's like, it already, like, I hadn't even gotten, like, 5 minutes of this movie barely, and it's already, like, yeah, I don't feel like that fits in this movie. Like, I don't think that's the comic relief you need for this movie, but it is what it is. It just comes off super weird. So Shayna comes and meets Gavin, and apparently she wants a job, and she's going to be a maid, and so Gavin just shallowly hires her without really like checking into all of what she's doing and what she's done in her past and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, it's like, I got this inkling, and I don't remember what the moment was, but I was like, is this going to be a religious movie? Is that what this is? Because it's already got kind of like some undertones, Like, I'm like, I think it might be. I guess I'm to assume that Shayna is into Gavin because she keeps laughing at his terrible jokes throughout this movie, and that's how I'm supposed to be clued in, even though they're like poorly delivered jokes, and Charlie Hunnam is probably too nice looking to be like a guy who had to develop a sense of humor. I was thinking about it because basically it's revealed that Gavin lives with a gay guy that he like took in because his family or whatever banished him because he had HIV. And so it was basically like, yeah, that's all we can really do. Like we accept this guy into our home because his family is a bunch of pieces of shit. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, I guess I wouldn't have a problem living with a gay guy. I guess it would just, like anybody, it's like, what kind of person are they? You know what I mean? Or is this gay guy cool? Is he, I don't know. I mean, it all depends. But it's like, I'm watching it and like, all I can think is like, if I had a gay guy living with me, it would just be like one more reason for women to shoot me down. If I tried to date them, they'd be like, oh, he must be gay. I mean, I already have these like, this body language that's kind of like a little effeminate, but it's like, I don't think it's that bad. And it starts to get religiouser when Shayna and Joe, her husband, who is played by Patrick Wilson, invite Gavin and his gay roommate over, and just they want them to have dinner together. So they all of a sudden start to, over dinner, they decide they're going to like join hands for prayer, and Patrick Wilson's character Joe is gonna pray the gay away if he can, and it's kind of ridiculous. It's like a little, it's insulting, but I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it does happen with a lot of people that, like they find out somebody's gay and they're like, oh, they need to be saved. They're not really gay. They just need to find God. It's like, no, they're gay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you don't want to accept that into your life, but you should, because it's the way it is. It feels like, this movie feels like an after-school special. Like, just the dialogue, the writing is pretty mediocre, and then the line deliveries are flat. Like, they have that lack of correct emphasis on certain syllables and stuff, I guess, that it just doesn't go over well. We see Shayna as a maid at the hotel, and her and Charlie talk, her and Gavin, Charlie Hunnam's character, they talk, and she apologizes for her husband, and he's like, well, it's no need to apologize, you didn't do anything. So it's like, there's just more church talk, and it's like, it doesn't make me uncomfortable to talk about church talk. It's just, enjoy it, and I don't want to hear about it because it's not my personal journey, So it's like, it is what it is. There's this intense moment with, because we keep kind of coming back and forth between what's been happening in Gavin's life to the present, where he's talking to Terrence Howard Hollis on the ledge, and we get a really intense moment because it turns out that Hollis actually has kids, and because he's sterile, he knows that they're not his because he's been sterile his whole life, and he finds out that his wife, fucked his brother to be able to have the kids look as much like him as possible, and it's pretty fucked up. I don't know if I could get over that if I had that happen to me, because it's if you want to do that, there are channels by which you could do that and it would come off better. It's, it's if she said, hey, I really want to have a child with you, or I want to raise a child with you, or children with you, would you be interested in doing the in vitro or, something like that? How would you feel about all of that? It's, the way it all blows over is it's just Terrence Howard is notably, very upset, and, he's trying to come to grips with it. And there's this moment where, cause Joe and Gavin keep having these interactions where it's they're arguing religion with each other, and Gavin delivers this line of, are you willing to admit that God might not exist? And Joe is no. And it just feels it feels unnatural. It's terrible. And so we get all of these other interactions, and obviously the movie is hinting that okay, Gavin and Shayna are gonna end up together, they're at least going to have a fling. And so they keep having interactions with each other, and Gavin makes a pass openly with Shayna on the bus, and he's trying to drive her away from Joe. He knows that Joe is a bad guy, right? And later on, Gavin apologizes for making the pass, and Shayna forgives him. And then I would say that basically in this movie, Gavin's entire fucking personality is being atheist, which I get it. I would say I haven't been there, but I've been there before. I've made it such a big part of my life that I didn't believe in God. And it's there's more to life than not believing in God. You know what I mean? It's tough, but if you basically don't think about it, it doesn't really affect anything. It's not really a big deal. But yeah, it's Gavin's entire personality is being atheist, and Joe's entire personality is being a theist. And I was really afraid that they were going to turn Gavin into a fucking believer at this point. It was just it didn't make any sense to me that he would, but at the same time, that certainly didn't seem off the table as far as what this movie would do. It's just the whole movie is airing out religious arguments and stuff, and it falls so flat for me from both ends. You know what I mean? It's they don't paint Joe up to be a monster really initially, and then they do. You know what I mean? And then I had one moment where I realized that there's a scene where Liv Tyler is saying something, and I was you left that take in the fucking movie? Everybody but the director at that point must have been Liv, could we run that line one more time? You were flat as an ironing board. And everything is trying to be a profound breakthrough in beliefs, and none of it works for me. It doesn't come off well, and the pace is slow as shit. It's just it's dragging on, explaining this story of how, Gavin ended up where he is and all this stuff. And I guess I would say the movie is well cast. If these actors were on their A game, I think that this would have been a better movie. I don't know if I would go so far as to say a good movie, but all of a sudden we get Gavin and Shayna making out, and, she's just feeling driven into his arms, and Joe is so controlling, and, he's not the man that she wants and all this stuff. So I was willing to bet at this point, because they keep saying that Shayna is going to school, and you might say you're going to school, but if you've got a class that day, you say you're going to class. You know what I mean? It's it doesn't work to say I've got to go to school. I'm going to school. It's like you say that when you're in grade school, you don't say that when you're out of that age range. You say you're going to class. Anyway, I had to make that note. I'm willing to bet that a lot of Terrence Howard's scenes in this movie were cut out. Like, I want to say they needed to build up his character more and show the kind of life he led before. Like maybe it's like you kept getting the Gavin flashbacks of like what happened in his life. We needed one where Terrence Howard kind of opened up a little bit finally towards the end, where he had built up some trust with Gavin. And, then it's like we could have seen Hollis's real life, Terrence Howard's real, situation and how things had been. And you could have seen how much he loved his wife and kids before today, all that shit. And my guess is you're supposed to see the similarities in the backstories behind like Gavin and Hollis. You've got this infidelity going on. You've got all these different things, and it's like Hollis is going to personify his wife cheating with Gavin, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's clunky. It's fucking clunky. So finally, Shayna and Gavin have sex, and the age gap is only 3 years. I would have, for some reason, thought Liv Tyler was a little older than that, but not like, I would have thought she was like older than him by more, but she's only 3 years older than him. And it's like he was born in 1980 and she was born in 1977 or something. It's at this point we get Liv Tyler boobs, which cannot redeem this movie, but it's worth a shot. And Joe finds out that Shayna is cheating. He knows it. It's like he's almost positive that, he's seen them together. He's seen her coming and going too many times to not realize it. And the story, it's like the way they progress the story at one point is it's like you're back to Gavin and Hollis talking on the ledge, and Hollis says, "So what happened next?" And then that's the storytelling style. Like it's not like even so like, so what happened today? What's different today? And it's like Joe is, stalking Shayna and Gavin, and it's like he sees them go into Gavin's apartment, and he goes and listens at the door, and he's like, I was afraid he was gonna walk in on them doing sex on each other, like people say. Apparently not. Joe elected to silently and emotionally break down outside the door and not interrupt, but he just wanted to take it as, confirmation of their infidelity. We learned that Gavin had a daughter, and she was very young, and he was driving, and they were in an accident, and he blames himself and all this stuff, and he makes a sarcastic remark about how she's probably up in heaven while all the other baby angels, and he's like, "Sorry, I'm such an asshole." And I'm like, yeah, you sound like a fucking douchebag. Like you're giving non-religious people a bad name by talking like that. Anyway, because it sounds more like you don't take your daughter's death seriously. You know what I mean? So Shayna never makes it to school. Joe never made it to work. This is what we're finding out when, we're back to Gavin and Hollis on the rooftop. And they know all of a sudden that Gavin is being held at gun, or, basically not held at gunpoint, but like he's basically been told by Joe that if he needs to go to the top of this building and jump off at 12 o'clock, or he's going to shoot Shayna. And so they're in the other building across the way watching as this is all unfolding. But like you keep seeing Joe and Shayna, like they're on the outs with each other, like it's clear that, Joe knows what's going on, and Shayna and Gavin are getting together all the time. Joe overhears them talking about, how basically she's planning to just leave Joe. Shayna and Gavin are going to be together. And so he's kind of like, feeling like he's got to do something. I was a lot more into the random hottie with the sex toy in the beginning of this fucking movie than I was into Liv Tyler. Because it was just like, Liv Tyler, she's just like flat as a board on the fucking, not that way, not the chest way. I'm talking like everything that she's doing acting wise is flat in this fucking movie. And there's a scene where Joe and Gavin are talking religion, like Joe has a gun and he's basically like in a standoff with Gavin and they're arguing religion, and Gavin's not backing down even in this situation, which I guess good for him. Joe's telling about who he was before he found God or whatever, and it's like he used to have this druggy life, you know, he used to go to strip clubs and he used to do this and that, and he'd gamble and all sorts of stuff. And then we find out that Joe, threatening to kill Shayna, has put Gavin up to going up on the ledge, okay? And Terrence Howard is still fucking killing it in this movie. He's getting like real emotional and shit. It's fucking great. I was deeply concerned that, actually I wasn't concerned, but I had a feeling that there was a chance that both Shayna and Gavin were going to die. Like Gavin was going to jump and Shayna was going to have already been shot before they could get to her. And it's like, it didn't end up happening that way. But they, you know, so the cops caught Joe, but Gavin already jumped. So Gavin's dead. And then, you know, they save Shayna. And at this point, I was damning myself for just finishing movies when I start them, because I honestly wanted to shut this fucking thing off. Like I was so fucking over this movie. I didn't enjoy it. For some reason, they made it so Shayna, you know, after she talks to Hollis, she goes by Joe's cell, and they just kind of exchange glances with each other. But I'm like, you mean to tell me that that's the setup, that you have the person who is literally almost just murdered by this person, you have them going an unguarded way to, you know, walk by the person who just almost murdered them? That's what you're telling me? Hollis goes back to be with his wife and kids. He decides he's going to forgive her, and, you know, he thinks of all the love he has for them and all this stuff, and how he wouldn't trade any of it. They dedicate this movie to a couple of people at the end that I'm sure have passed away, and I just have to say, if I die unexpectedly or something, if you dedicate a movie to me, never make it a movie like this. Please don't do it. I mean, dedicate any kind of movie, like just movies that are in my vein, but for the love of God, I will come back and fucking haunt the shit out of you if you dedicate a movie to me and it sucks this bad. My praise for this movie is Terrence Howard. I think he's at a much higher echelon than these other actors. At least that's what I'm seeing in this movie. My criticisms, the overly religious and anti-religious narratives, are fucking terrible. Like all these fucking overtones, I don't like it. The flat acting, fucking terrible. And we needed more of Terrence Howard's life, as I mentioned. We needed to see how things were with him and his wife, because we're just kind of getting this superficial version of what his life was, and we are just hearing him talk about it. And it's like, we need to see interactions with his kids and interactions with his wife, and, you know, basically just how much they really love each other. The only IMDb nugget I have is, and this is more just dumb, but it is, Shayna asks if Gavin was a teacher, and Gavin replies, yes. Charlie Hunnam played a PE teacher in Green Street Hooligans from 2005. So, yeah, fucking terrible, honestly. Like, it doesn't have it. I doubt that they were making it in reference to that Charlie Hunnam movie. I'm sorry. I don't think that that's what was going on. I really don't. Okay, so we got a runtime of 101 minutes for this movie. The budget was $7.3 million. Worldwide gross, $1.2 million. IMDb rating, 6.5, which seems a tad high for me. Rotten Tomato critic score, 14%. There it is. Rotten Tomato audience score, 48%. Yeah, I guess. Personal rating, 2 out of 5 stars. Carried solely by the weight of Terrence Howard's performance. I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best. I am hopefully going to keep churning out these fucking podcast episodes. If I can keep thinking of movies to cover, I'll do it. I might change how many I do. I might go to a smaller number, just like one at a time maybe, but it is what it is. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Have a good day. Brandon at Random Reviews is performed, written, directed, produced, and edited by Brandon Griffiths. Theme music is performed by Augusto Diniz from Fiverr.